We're on Daf Heyamid Beis. Last two words on Heyamid Aleph. Tenach kol milsa diksiva b'hai inyana milsa deloksiva b'hai inyana minola. The Gemara makes the following point. There are two parshios that address miluim. One is in Sefer Shmos, and the other is in Sefer Vayikra. So we have Tetzaveh and we have Tzav. Now, if we take a look at these two parshios, we find the following distinction. Whereas the parsha in Shmos is referring to what we call the tzivui, and the command of what Aaron and Barav have to do and have to undergo during the period of inauguration, the other parsha tells us about the implementation, not the tzivui, the kiyum. And I understand that, according to Reb Chanina, that which is written in Parshas Tetzaveh and Sefer Shmos, that's part of a tzivui, that's likuva. That's absolutely critical. But what about that which is omitted in Parshas Tetzaveh and appears only in Parshas Tzav? And the Gemara has in mind the following, that with regard to the Urim V'Tumim, Hashem told Moshe that the Urim V'Tumim, which has on it the Shem Hashem, the ineffable name of God, and that has to be inserted into the Choshen. There were folds in the Choshen, and you had to insert the Urim V'Tumim, this parchment, that had on it the name of Hashem. And this is only recorded in the 8th chapter of Vayikra in Parshas Tzav. We don't find it in Parshas Tetzaveh in Perek Tes of Sefer Shmos. How do we know even that would be likuva? Omer of Nachmer Yitzchak Yolif Pesach Pesach. We have a Gzeirat Shava of Pesach Pesach. Both in Parshas Tetzaveh and in Tzav, you'll find the word Pesach. In the first case, Parshas Tetzaveh, ve'es Aaron ve'espanov takriv el Pesach o el Moed. And in the case of Parshas Tzav in Vayikra, v'achal Aaron ubanav b'sar ha'ayel les halechem asher b'sal Pesach o el Moed. Again, the word Pesach. And so we have a Gzeiras Shava, that anything that's included in Parshas Tzav is also included in Parshas Tetzaveh. Rav Mesharshi Omar, he has an alternative Gzeiras Shava, and he says, Ushmartem es mishmeres Hashem. We find in Parshas Tzav that the Torah says there should be mishmeres Hashem. And what that means is that whatever was commanded in Parshas Tetzaveh and whatever written here locally in Parshas Tzav, it's mishmeres, ushmarta. And ushmarta means that it's absolutely likuva. It's critical. Protect it. I don't need Pesach Pesach. Rav Ashi Omar, Kichen Tsuvesi, that we find, and this is a pasuk in Tzav, in Parshas Tzav in Vayikra. It says there, Kichen Tsuvesi, and that means that anything that I've commanded you is critical, here in Parshas Tzav. Now, once we have this pasuk, Yichein Suvesi, the Gemara now digresses and analyzes this phrase that appears in slightly different forms 3 times. Tana Rabbana, we learned in the Brisa, Yichein Suvesi, Kasher tzivesi, kasher tziva. So let's go through very quickly the three psukim. Number one, we have the pasuk right here that says, "Vaydaber Moshe el Aaron vel Elazar vel Itamar banav hanosarim chu es hamincha hanoseres meishe Hashem v'yachlu kichein tzuvesi." So we have kichein tzuvesi, for I have been commanded so. Now, a little bit further in that same parsha, it says, "V'yasachazeh tnufa v'shoka truma tochlu kasher tziva Hashem." So we have kasher tziva. Now we have a third pasuk, kichein tzuvesi, which is in the next pasuk. It says, "Ves seira chatas doros darash Moshe v'nei soraf vayiktzofes al Elazar vel Tamar b'nei Aaron and Osarim limo madua lo chaltem es hachatos achol tochlu osa b'kodesh kasher tivisi." And that means by ninus yochlu, that even though Nadav Avihu had died and Aaron and Bonov, his two sons, Elazar and Tom, were still alive, they were in a state of aninus. Nevertheless, they eat the carbon mincha. So the Brisa says the following: Kasher tzivesi b'shas maisa omala. In other words, when he found out, Moshe Rabbeinu, that they did not eat the chatos as he had commanded them, but rather they burnt the chatos, that's when he said, Kichen kasher tzivisi. He's starting with actually the second pasuk, the third pasuk, actually, as we quoted it, and it says, "Achol tochlu osa b'kodesh kasher tzivesi." And then kasher tziva Hashem v'lo me'elai ani omer. In other words, when I tell you to eat the shlomim in the state of aninus, just like I told you to eat the chatos in the state of aninus, but that you didn't do, you burnt the chatos. But at least be careful about the shlomim. It's kasher tziva Hashem. Don't suspect me that I came up with this idea on my own. Hashem told me to command you that even in your state of aninus, you should be eating the shok, etc., of the korban shlom. Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina. Now the Gemara goes back to the discussion about the Yomei Miluim. Machnasayim ein ksuvim b'parsha. It's very interesting that the Torah discusses and Moshe commands wearing all the begadim, but yet the Machnasayim was left out. And why is that so? So that we have to figure out where's Machnasayim here. The Torah tells us here in Parshas Tetzaveh that this is the matter on which you shall do for them to sanctify them to serve as kohanim. That extra pasuk is coming lahavi to include a Machnasayim, and not only that, but Asiris ha'efa. Now, the Asiris ha'efa is a korban mincha that has to be brought daily by the Kohen Gadol, and every Kohen on the first occasion, when he is, so to speak, installed as a Kohen, he has to bring Asiris ha'efa, that special mincha, as part of his chinuch. So Bishlei v'Michnasayim Siva bin Yonim de Begadim. This pasuk v'zeh hadovar asher tasa immediately follows the parsha of Big Kahuna. So the Vav is Mechaber, this parsha, with the previous parsha. But El Asiris Eifa Minola, how do you know that they are required to bring the Asiris Eifa? Where is that? I mean, it says Zeh Dover Shatasa Lehem Lekadish Osam. Asya Zeh. We have Exer Shova Zeh. Why? It says Zeh Korban Aaron Ubadav Asher Yakrivu La Asiris Ha'efa. And we have our pasuk that says V'zeh Dover Shatasa. So in the parsha of Miluim, we have Zeh twice, Zeh Dover Shatasa Lehem Lekadesh, etc., which is here in the first part of the parsha of Miluim, and then later on in the parsha of Miluim, not on the contrary, and later on, if we fast forward to Parshas Sav, there it says, Zeh Korban Aaron Ubanav Asher Yakriv L'Shem Asiris Ha'efa. So it says explicitly Asiris Ha'efa. And we derive from this that during the course of the Miluim, it wasn't sufficient that they wore the begadim, they also had to bring this Korban Mincha, which is called Asiris Ha'efa. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai Minayin Sha'af Mikra Parsha Miakev. How do we know? And Rabbi Yochanan holds that anything that was included in the Parsha Miluim is Ma'akev. The kahuna is critical. It depends upon it. How do we know that this applies even to Mikra HaParsha? Because in Parsha Sav, in Sefer Vayikra, when the Torah describes the implementation of the various commands and the services of the Yemei Miluim, it says over there that Zeh Dover Shetziva Hashem. And Talmud Lomar Vayomer Moshe El Ha'eda Zeh Dover Shetziva Hashem, indicating that Moshe is talking to the Eda, and Zeh Dover Shetziva Hashem. He reviews with them all the psukim in the parsha of Miluim. That's what we call Mikra Parsha. And Afilu Dibur Ma'akev. Davar is interpreted as Dibur. And the Dibur here is the Mikra Parsha, which the Torah says that this is the word that God commanded them, and that this Parsha reading is absolutely critical in the process of inauguration, what we call the Miluim. And that's going to be the end of this previous sugya. Now we start the sugya of Levishas Begad. And we established that in the context of the inauguration of the Miluim, Moshe had to don the clothing of the Kohanim, in this case, Aaron and his sons, putting on top of them the big kahuna that they would wear. This was Moshe Rabbeinu's responsibility. Kesad Hilbishon. The Gemara seems to be asking a very naive question. Give me a blow-by-blow description of how Moshe Rabbeinu put on the clothes. Did he start with Aaron and he completed Aaron with all his begadim, then he went to Bnei Aaron, or maybe he put one beged on Aaron and the same beged on Bnei Aaron, etc. How did it work? So the Gemara says, Ketzad Hilbishon, that's not a valid question. We only ask questions if they fit into one of two categories. Either they shed a light on the parsha, on Torah B'Tzav, or they have halachic significance. But in this case, it fits into no category whatsoever. You know, you're talking to me about a story that took place at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu when he put on the garments. I mean, what halachic significance does that have lidoros. Furthermore, how does it shed a light on the psukim? So first, the Gemara tries to give a background answer. Elaketzad malbishon liasid lava. After Tchias HaMesim, we're going to have to know exactly how Moshe dressed the Kohanim in the Big Day Kahuna, so that for the Bayis HaShlishi, we're going to have to know exactly what the Seder Advarim is and how to be malbish the Kohanim to inaugurate them for the Avodah and the Mikdash HaShlishi. The Gemara is not happy with it. Why? Liyasid Lami Nami. Shevo Aaron Ubonavu Moshe Moem. He says that, you know what? Moshe will be part of the Tchias HaMesim. He'll come around. Aaron will be there. We'll ask them, and we'll find out how they did the Levitch. We don't have to know about that now. Ella. The Gemara says, Ketzad, he'll beach on. My question is, Lemizrei Kroy. How was Moshe Rabbeinu's act of putting the garment on Aaron Ubanov? If I know exactly how he did it, that would reveal an interpretation of the psukim themselves. And Pligi B'nei Rab Chia or Rab Yochanan is a machlokas about how to read the psukim in the parsha of Moshe being malbish Aaron Ubanov. Chad Amar, according to one, and we'll see how he reflects on the psukim. But he was of the opinion that Aaron, that first Moshe Rabbeinu donned all the big day kahuna that were necessary on Aaron, and then he went to the Banav. The Chad Amar, according to another opinion, Aaron ubanav b'vasachas, meaning he took one garment and put it on Aaron, then took that same category of garment, put it on Elazar, Itamar, and so forth and so on. Amar Abaye, what is this all about? What is this machlokas? Certainly, it's clear from the psukim that Moshe put all the begadim necessary on Aaron, and then he went on as a separate entity of the Achakach, and he started putting on the begadim on the bnei Aaron. And that's clear in the case of all the begadim. The Gemara mentions just two of them, but it means all the begadim except for one, and that's ksones and mitznefes. But what's the exception? The exception is going to be the case of the avnit, the belt. As far as ksones umitznefes kliyamalo pli the Aaron v'achach bonav, the bein bitzavo bein basiya Aaron kodem. It's clear from the psukim, both in Parshas Tetzaveh at the end of Shmos and in Parshas Tzav at the beginning of Vayikra. In both cases, it's absolutely clear from the psukim. There's no contradiction in the psukim that it was Aaron and then afterwards Bonav. Ki pligi be avneit, but the real issue is an avneit because we have a contradiction between Parshas Tetzaveh and Parshas Tzav as to exactly how the avneit was put on Aaron first and then his Bonav or not. Mandi Omer Aaron v'achach Bonav. According to that opinion, that these were separate placing of the avneit on the Kohanim by Moshe Rabbeinu. Here, we're going to read the psukim in the following way. The Chsiv, it says, Vayachgar oso b'avneit in the singular. And this is again in Parshas Tzav in Sefer Vayikra Perek Ches. And the word avneit is clearly in the singular because it says oso. So he finishes with Aaron, and then he goes after all the begadim of the whole parsha. Now he goes to the bun. Osam avneit, and in the other parsha, back in Shmos, it says osam in the plural, and that means that they were separate. There was oso and then osam. Oso referring to Aaron, and osam referring to Banav. So first Moshe put on the avneit, the belt, onto Aaron, and then After Aaron had finished and he had all his begadim, then Moshe went further. He went on to the Banav, and that's Osa. Separate. Uleman Yoma Aaron Ubanav Bivas Achas. How did he come to that conclusion? Oksiv Vayachgor Oso Bavneit. Oso in the singular means that there was a separate levisha of the avneit as far as Aaron is concerned. And only after he finished with Aaron, then he came to the Bnei Aaron to put the avneit on the Bnei Aaron. And here we turn to Daf Vav Hamid Aleph. So we get a little bit of a head start for tomorrow's Daf. This man, the Yoma, is going to say the following. The Torah, by using the word oso in the singular, is trying to teach me a halach about the avneit, which we'll discuss in just a second. But in truth, as far as the Levish is concerned, it was osam. It was Moshe putting on the avneit on Aaron Ubanov together, bivasachas. But the Torah mentions also separately to teach us a different halacha, that the avneit of Aaron was different than the avneit of Banav. And what this means is about shatnez. The Torah tells us at the end of Sefer Shmos, in Perek Chav Tes, that the belt, the avneit of the Kohen Gadol, was made with linen and blue wool. Linen and wool. Do you hear this? It means there was shatnez in the belt of Aaron. Aaron is the Kohen Gadol. Now, what about the belt of the Kohen Hedjot? This is going to be a major debate amongst the Tanoim. We'll have it in the sugya later on at Daf Yud Gimel. But here the Gemara is saying that according to one man Yoma, I'm going to prove to you that the belt that was worn by your rank and file Kohen, or Kohen Hedjot, was not the belt of shatnez that had both linen and wool in it. That was the belt of the Kohen Gadol. That's why the Torah went out of its way to use the word oso, to indicate that Aaron's avneit as the Kohen Gadol was different because it had shatnez, in contradistinction to the avneit that was worn by the sons of Aaron, the other Kohen. Ulaman Yomar Aaron v'achach Banav. And wait a second, we still have a problem, according to Mandi Yoma, that it was Bazecher Zeh, not Vasachas, Vaksiv v'chagarta Osam avneit. Osam implying all together in one fell swoop, both Aaron and Banav. Amalacha hahu kamashman avneitel shagadol zeu avneitel shakohen hedjot. The Torah added the word osam to teach us that it's the same identical avneit that was worn by the Kohen Gadol, that was worn by Banav, by the other Kohen Hedjot, meaning it had shatnez in it. And every Kohen, whether he's the Kohen Gadol that's explicit in the Torah, or the other Kohen Hedjotos, they had to have a shatnez, a linen and wool woven together in the avneit. So Vayachgar oso b'avneit, and first in the sequence, Moshe Rabbeinu put the avneit on the Kohen Gadol on Aaron, and that's oso. And then it says Vayachgar osam. Then he was ready to put the avneit on the Bnei Aaron, meaning the other Kohen. So why does the Torah have to emphasize that? Shma Mina, to teach me that Aaron v'achach Banav, that first it became Aaron, and then it was Banav. Now the Gemara takes a step back and says, what is this business of bevasachas? As one man, the Yomi, says that Moshe Rabbeinu put the avneit on the Kohen Gadol and on Banav, on Aaron and Banav simultaneously. How can you do that? How can you put a belt on different people, different belts simultaneously? And the answer is bevasachas mimishkachas lo. The answer is lo tzricha di akdim. What it meant is that before Moshe Rabbeinu would put on the other begadim, if it was bevasachas, he would put the belt on Aaron, and then before he would conclude the process of putting the balance of the begadim on Aaron, he would now take the belt for the Bnei Aaron and put it on the Bnei Aaron. That's called Bavasa. So this is where we're going to end for today. And tomorrow's daf, here on daf Vav, begins with the words Mafrishim Kohen Gadol, and that's an analysis of the Prisha of the Kohen Gadol for the 7 days before Yom Kippur. So let me take this up.
May I ask you a question?
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I thought it was, I actually thought that it was Dr. David Plotsky who was here. So I apologize if I said before anything that indicated I was talking to Dr. Plotsky. I honestly don't know where he disappeared. So you asked me about the Beis Yaakov girls. Did you want me to relate to that question?